Hello and welcome to Endurance Minded. It's the podcast that aims to redefine what it means to reach our full potential by exploring how movement and mindset impacts our lives and how we can all work to show up as the best versions of ourselves. I'm your host, Taylor Thomas, founder at TEC, and before we get started, I've got an all call. If you're a coach or an entrepreneur in the health and fitness industry who's trying to grow your business without burning out, I want to personally invite you to apply for the Growth Circle. The Growth Circle is our business accelerator program at TEC, and it's designed specifically to serve providers like you in the health and fitness industry. People who are incredible at what they do, but they need a proven framework and real support to actually scale. Let's be real, running a coaching business can feel like a grind. You're juggling programming and client communication, marketing, admin work, and somehow you're still trying to grow your business. That's where the Growth Circle comes in. Inside the program, we help you nail down your ideal client and get really clear on what your offer is. We help you build a consistent lead gen process so you're not wondering where your next client comes from. We help you improve your sales skills without feeling salesy. And most importantly, create systems and support so that you're not doing it alone. You'll be a part of a driven community of other business owners in this space who get it. We host regular group calls, team intensives, mastermind sessions to make sure you're never stuck trying to figure it out in a silo. So if you're tired of winging it, if you're tired of trying to do it all by yourself, to recreate the wheel, figure out what levers to pull, what's broken and what's not, if you're ready to turn your passion into a business that actually works for you, I want to invite you to apply. You can find the link to the Growth Circle in our show notes. And I want you to really think about what's best for you and your business. I want you to think about how your business can really make an impact on the industry and how it can give you the life that you're excited about and make the money that you deserve, working with the clients that you love, spending time investing in the things that you care about and you're passionate about. So if this is a problem you're committed to solving and you want to take your business to the next level, again, click the link in the show notes. I can't wait to hear from you. Hello and welcome back. So I think we can all agree that most people will never swim 34 miles, let alone in the open ocean, through 3 separate channels over nearly 24 hours without stopping. But here's the thing. This episode isn't really about swimming. It's about that moment we've all experienced when you want to quit and what actually keeps you going. Today's guest, my guest on this episode, Ted Lomicka, became the first man in history to complete the Triple Maui Nui Swim. It's a 34-mile open water effort connecting the islands of Lanai, Maui, and Molokai. And somewhere in the middle of that swim, after many hours in the water, in the dark, in rough conditions, he hit a point where he was ready to stop. And it's not because he wasn't capable, as you'll certainly find out in this episode, but it's because, like all of us, he had reached his limit. And what happened next is really what this conversation with Ted is all about. Ted is a 35-time IRONMAN finisher. He is an ULTRAMAN world champion athlete. He is someone who continues to push the edge of what's possible at 57 years old. But more than that, he's someone who understands that endurance is not just physical. He understands well that it's emotional, it's mental, and it's deeply connected to the people that you surround yourself with. In my conversation with Ted, we talk about what it actually feels like to spend nearly a full day in the ocean, how to manage your mind when everything in you wants to stop, and why the right perspective at the right moment can change everything. This one, my friends, is a powerful one. Ted is a phenomenal storyteller. He has done things that many of us, myself included, can only dream of from a physical pursuit perspective. He is also an executive, a family man, an adjunct professor. He manages to check a lot of boxes, and his story is one that so many of us will learn from, can connect with, and I think that you will find it deeply, deeply valuable. So without further ado, I can't wait to offer to you my conversation with Ted. Let's get into it. Ted, welcome to the show. How are you?
Well, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much, Taylor. It's a delight to be part of your show, to be part of your audience, and to speak and interact with the folks that follow you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So I'm excited to dive right in. I just want to set the stage for folks where the primary endeavor that kind of caused us to connect is a swim that covered 34 miles, 3 channels in Hawaii, nearly 24 hours in the open ocean. There were highs and lows. At one point in the second channel, you thought about giving it all up. Take us to the start line of something like that. What does something like this even represent? But before you get in the water, set the stage for us before all this incredible endurance activity kicks off.
Yeah, no, it's a great place to start. How do you begin a journey that absolutely massive? And I'll say, in terms of where it begins with planning. And it begins with diligent planning. And so one of the things that I did so well, to my credit, was I fielded a phenomenal team. And on my team, I had 3 retired Coast Guards. I had Andy Joka. I had Phil Kibbe. I had Brett Collins, 3 retired Coast Guard members. Phil Kibbe brought his son, Logan Kibbe. And so between the 4 of them, I've got people who can drive the boat and they can man the kayak. So I've got a great practical crew. And then I rounded that out with people who are going to be incredibly supportive with me as I swim. We've got a really good friend who lives in Hawaii, Terry Dietz. She's going to be my tandem swimmer. And she and I are going to tackle this challenge together. And that's really cool. Now, she's got a lot of folks that she knows, and she knows some really amazing people in Hawaii. Tina Neal is one of the swimmers that she knows, and Tina is amazingly prolific in her Hawaiian Channel swims, her marathon swims. So, she brings just this wonderful skill set. And she's the feeder. So that's a funny role. I know your audience will say, what's a feeder? It sounds like SeaWorld. And, arguably it is. So the feeder is the person that gives us food, water, nutrition from the boat in bottles on a rope when we need it. It's a really critical role because that's also the swimmer's advocate. It's the voice of the swimmer while the swimmer is in the water and the interaction with the captain. So that's a really critical role. And then we have Michelle Simmons. Michelle Simmons is a prolific iron distance triathlete. She routinely qualifies in races at the IRONMAN World Championship. And she is our observer. She's documenting for the purpose of getting the swim finishes certified by 2 bodies, Hawaii Channel Swimming Association and Marathon Swimmers Federation. So for both of those organizations, Hawaiian Channel Swimming Association and Marathon Swimmers Federation, we want to make sure we comply with the rules. We want to document that we've complied with the rules and put forth the swim as a bona fide swim. So those are the people that help that happen. But we also have a phenomenal group of advisors. And among them, Stephen Managlia has helped us formulate the swim, come up with the best approach for this particular swim, the sequence of 3 islands, the beaches from where we'll start. He helps us determine the best times of day to start. And how does he do this? Because he has swam each of these island swims, each of these channels individually 46 times. So he knows this really well. So linking these 3 together is almost second nature for him. He sees it, he relishes this challenge. Round that out with a gentleman by the name of Mike Spalding, who is one of the original Hawaii Channel swimming legends. And he's a wonderful influence because he's lived this for decades, seen phenomenal swimmers, been a phenomenal swimmer himself. And he just brings just a wealth of experience. Ryan Leong with the Kaiwi Channel Swimming Association is all part of it. And my good friend John Storm, who I've done a lot of endurance swimming with in Hawaii, he is the director for the North Shore Swim Series. and author of the book Chasing Limits, which featured a time he, myself, Stephen Managula, and a few other swimmers tackled each of these, or attempted to tackle each of these three channels individually over 3 days.
Man, it's incredible. It strikes me that with any endeavor like this, in be it ultra distance swim or triathlon or anything, there's the spotlight gets put on the athlete, and we certainly the accomplishment is on the athlete side is something to be celebrated. But we forget about all of the support, right? No, none of us who tackle these big goals get there in isolation. You can't do these things in a vacuum. And whether it's friends, family, support crew, it takes so many other people to be invested in that vision, and then ultimately in the execution to really see that through, and to make the athlete's job something that actually is obtainable, versus like you said, there's no way you could have done any of those jobs from the water. You needed that crew.
When you look at it from the outside,
reminder.
yeah. When you look at it from the outside, something like marathon swimming really looks like an individual sport, and the reality is so different. It is really a team sport, and it's a sport where you need to lean deeply into the team because of the complexity of pulling it off. And so it's just a wonderful corollary. That's where some of the wonderful business corollaries come, leadership and managing a team. And it becomes really incredibly real when you've got an endurance event and your team is right there with you. It's very different when you go from the iron distance stepping into the ultra distance. At the iron distance events, the Ironman in particular, you have a slew of volunteers. A lot of times there's one for one. They might have 2,500 participants in that race. I've seen Ironman races where they've got 4,000, even 5,000 volunteers. But you don't have a personal volunteer. You have a volunteer working a particular station, and you thank them for the gracious work they provided, but it's not personal. When you step up to the realm of endurance out of necessity, it's a bring your own crew, BYOC. And so these are people for whom you rely, and you get a sense of that deep connection. You're going to go really deep physically. They're there to watch over you. They're there to make sure you stay safe and protected. And so that role is certainly very real, very tangible. And again, from a business corollary, we think about highly effective teams. There's a lot of crossover.
Mm-hmm. I love that you brought that up. That's been something that for me has continued to be one of the biggest opportunities in terms of continuing to stay engaged in chasing physical goals. Is that my kind of little saying, and I've said on this podcast before, and then certainly to the people I work with, and is that fitness is a great, really fun side effect of these endeavors, but it's actually not the thing that I'm most proud of. Right? It's all the lessons I learn and the application of those lessons into other areas of my life. Be it relationships, be it my team and businesses and entrepreneurship for me, and it's far reaching. And fitness is great and it's fun to push myself, but the things that it allows me to do in terms of the growth far exceeds the actual physical growth. And so I love that you brought that up. I think it's easy to kind of put the physical aspect and these physical pursuits in a bit of a silo, but we have to remember, that I think they touch every part of us, and it really does make us better. Like you said, it makes us better leaders, right? It starts with self-leadership. You can't give what you don't have. And yeah, I've seen that in a very big way in my own life. So it's great to hear you bring that up. I love that.
Yeah, and almost, we can, well stated, and we can kind of wrap that, kind of put a bow around that with the leadership imperative. And if we're thinking about the leadership imperative, we realize that in every meaningful endeavor in which we engage, whether that's in sport or in business, it eventually becomes a test of system control. The leaders who succeed are not those who avoid the adversity, but those who can recognize in real time when their system begins to drift. and they have the tools to bring it back, the levers to right that ship. And so at the highest levels of performance, the question is no longer, can we do this? It really transforms into a different statement. Can we maintain control of how we think, decide, and act when that becomes difficult to do, as it is in any high pressure, high performance, significant endeavor in which we engage?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I want to. You mentioned the iron distance, and I'm curious. I know that ultimately this multi-channel swim was the culmination of a deep history in endurance sports. Correct me if I'm wrong on the quantities and the trajectory, but 35 Ironmans, I believe. I know you're on track for another one this year. That parlayed into ULTRAMAN, parlayed into the channel swims. Talk to me about that escalation.
Sure.
So many athletes, reach for that next thing, right? At first, the one thing seems out of reach, and then we grasp that, and then we go a little harder, a little longer, and
That's right.
and then we keep kind of skipping rocks and or skipping stones. So yeah, what was that? What was that escalation like from your experience, and what drove that?
Yeah. I fell in love with triathlon. I think in terms of why it fit and why I really like to do that, I do believe that I have a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset. And I will attempt to do the things that perhaps I'm not good at, but things I enjoy, and I'll eventually get better. And so that's an important way of thinking about things. And so doing that, I really started to enjoy triathlons. I was doing what they call the Olympic distance, where the run is 6.2 miles. But before that, you've ridden a bike 24 miles. You swam, and it feels like a big deal. You've swam a little bit less than a mile. So, in that event, I did that year after year after year. I met a lot of people. When I did Memphis in May, that was an iconic event. When I was doing this in the early 2000s, some of the best American athletes that would race the Ironman World Championship would go and compete at Memphis in May. That short Olympic distance event is what they called it, because they could qualify for the Ironman at that event, which showed you there were just not a lot of races. The sport had not proliferated across the nation. But I met some of the best, absolute best. And it was an influence. And I just had this quest. Could I do an iron distance triathlon if I diligently trained for it? And maybe the thought was a lot of training. One day, at one point in my life, I might be able to do that. And I had the opportunity, and I did it. And so that was Ironman Florida in 2006, my very first Ironman. I absolutely loved it, and I wanted to immediately do more. I signed up for Ironman Louisville, the town in which I grew up. That was 2007. So 2006, my first, 2007, my second. And it really took hold. And I did more and more. And in 2016, I had enough frequent flyer credits with what they called the Ironman Legacy program that I could go to the big show. I could go to the World Championship. Now, I had a one and done. They're going to give me one chance to do it. And if I don't make it, that's it. Too bad for me. But I did make it. And that was really a beautiful thing on my 21st Ironman to finish that World Championship in Hawaii, which was just epic. I just really loved everything about that. And then I realized that I was interested in something more. I was really what comes next? How would I ever get back to Hawaii? Because I don't have the physical ability to qualify. I just don't have that kind of athletic talent. I really see myself as an ordinary person in terms of athletic ability. But I've been able to do extraordinary things because I have what is important. I have mindset. And how can I get back? And I found a way to get back to Hawaii and race a triathlon, ULTRAMAN, which is even bigger, right? Now we're not talking 1 day, we're talking 3 days. 12 hours on, 12 hours off for each of 3 days. 321 miles. And the distances were such that you couldn't just get by and kind of walk the second half of your marathon. You had to have true mastery of each of these three disciplines. One of the things I did like about even the promotion of that ULTRAMAN was they said we would be tested on three different levels: physically, mentally, and spiritually. And I thought about that and I said, well, this is fantastic because physically I'm good, but I'm not great. And I have these two other levels. Maybe I can be much better in these two other levels. But I kind of like that, with the athleticism being 1/3 of the total event. So I thought maybe this is for me. I loved it. I did it. Somehow I managed to get a finish there, and then went to the World Championship, the ULTRAMAN World Championship in Hawaii, and I was able to finish that. And then I tried a different series. I tried the Anvil Ultra Distance Triathlon Race Series, which takes multiples of the iron distance event. It literally takes multiples of the 140.6 distance. And in a continuous format, you can do not just the single, but the double, the triple, the quadruple, the quintuple. And so you've got 5 different races that you can do with that distance. And that became my quest.
Wow. Did you do the 5?
I did the 5. In fact, you're looking at the first athlete in the Anvil series to ever do all 5. Now, there are athletes who have done the 2, the 3, and the 5 in all kinds of different manners. I've got a friend of mine, Josh Keeker, who's on the cusp. He's done 4 of the quintuples. He's thinking about if he wants to be the first to the 5 in that quintuple series. And then there's athletes that have done something called the Deca, which is exactly what it sounds like, 10x. But for me, I was trying to find something for me and what would make sense for me. And what I was really fascinated with is each of these different Anvil events at the different distance, I would show up. I had a friend that I hired, Ivan Pancic, that was my one-man crew. He was phenomenal. And he and I figured out how to solve for each of these different distances and get a finish on our first attempt at each of these different distances. With me, with no special athletic ability. But what we were testing was mindset, and we proved that that can work.
Tell me about, I know there's, inevitably the concept or just the idea, the question will arise. I know as people listen to this, they're like, Ted, that's incredible. But that could never be me. And the reason that they're going to say that out of the gate, it's not physical ability, it's not mindset. It could certainly be some of those things, is time. And so I am curious. I know that you are an executive in the healthcare space. I assume you are busy like the rest of us, and you don't have an unlimited amount of free time. Just run me through, like, how does someone who is, to your point, and by your own admission, an ordinary person with a life and a job, and you're not a professional athlete, how do you do it? Where does the time come from? Because I know people are going to, that is the first thing. That's the first stumbling block. And,
it is.
So I would love to, help us get rid of that stumbling block, because there's no better example of someone like yourself, I think. I'm making an assumption. So run us through that.
Physiologically, you've got 3 properties: speed, strength, and endurance. The beauty of endurance, it will stay with you the longest. The first one to go is speed. So if you're willing to make this bargain, really a bargain with yourself, if you're willing to show up for an endurance event as large and as difficult and as time-consuming as Ironman is on race day, and say to yourself, my goal here today is not to win this race. My goal here today is not to win my age group. My goal here today is one of personal fitness, and my goal is nothing more than getting to the starting line uninjured and getting to the finish line uninjured. And I proved that. My goal, I kid you not, my goal on my very first Ironman, 2006, that Ironman Florida race, was mediocrity. Yeah. Now, doesn't that sound like a funny goal, mediocrity? So I had a definition for this. We had 25 of us from Nashville that were going to this event. And I was committed that I wanted to be right in the middle of where they were going to finish in terms of the spread from first to last. I didn't expect to be first and I didn't want to be last, but I did want to be right in the middle. And when we finished at the end of the day, I took the 25 athletes, men and women, very talented folks who had most of whom had hired phenomenal coaches and put a lot of quality time into their training. And I was right in the middle. And so I was 13. The interesting thing was when I got my age group data, I actually bifurcated the top half and bottom half, and I hit mediocrity within my age group at Ironman. And I was so delighted with that because that was my stated goal from the outset. So how did I do that? I took an economic concept that I borrowed, diminishing marginal returns, and I said, I'm going to show up for these races, and I'm going to have fresh legs. I'm going to have clear mind. I'll be incredibly well rested. And that's what I'm taking forth into the race. And that is what's going to work for me. I will not show up at the race overtrained, deeply fatigued, mentally worn down, burned out, and attempt to get over that finish line. So it's a different approach. For me, it's a very pragmatic approach so I can continue to live my busy life, which includes, I'm a full-time healthcare executive. I'm a part-time professor at Vanderbilt. I have a wife and 2 daughters. So, I have a lot in terms of time commitments. I fit it in because it's fun, but it doesn't really drive or dictate my planning. In terms of hours, I get by in about 12 hours a week, which tends to look like a pretty big weekend. It's a big bike ride on Saturday, a long run on Sunday, a few runs throughout the week, a few swims throughout the week, and the occasional big swim on a Sunday. That's how my week fills out.
I love that. Yeah, I've as a coach, I've always worked to help athletes understand what a pragmatic approach, to use your language, and I think it's perfectly describes it, to use a pragmatic approach to their training. And it's, the point is that it should only exist to the extent that it adds value to your life, and it fits seamlessly into your life. And just because we read on the internet that somebody who did an Ironman trained for 25 hours a week, it doesn't mean that that's right for someone else. You could do it on 8 hours. You could do it on 12. It's whatever works. And I think I just wanted people to hear that, because I was expecting you would have a similar approach, knowing, like you said, that there are demands on your time. And I think, there's so much opportunity in finding an approach that works and actually adds value versus, getting burned out, pushing everything else from a commitment perspective to the side for the pursuit of this one thing. And then you're so tired of it by the time you get to the thing, you don't even want to do it anymore. Right. I've always said that the worst thing that could happen is you do one of these types of events and you hang your bike up and hang your shoes up, and then you take the next 5 years off. The goal is that you parlay that into something else that's fun and exciting. So I appreciate you breaking that down tactically, because I do think that is, again, I know that's something that folks cling to, and it's not any fault of their own. I think it's just easy to see all of these kind of highlight reels out in the world of all these people with seemingly all this time, and it just doesn't have to be that way, right? And good for them, but also you can accomplish a lot with a relatively small commitment. So good on you. That's impressive.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So getting back to, I want to dive a little bit deeper into the kind of, I guess, like mindset or like meaning behind endurance. Yes. With all of this under your belt, 35 Ironmans, ULTRAMAN, the Anvil, channel swims, all of this, I would imagine there has been some evolution of kind of your athletic identity and what all this means to you. So just give me from, first Ironman to where you're at now, the channel swim, and
Yeah.
you're 57 now, correct?
I'm 57. That's correct. Yes.
So from 2006 to 57 years old
Yep.
now, and a tremendous amount of stuff in those
Yeah.
20 years. You've put a lot into 20 years. So good on you. What is I mean, how is your definition of endurance changed through from first Ironman to where you're at now?
Yeah, that's a great. Yeah, it's wonderful. At first, it was me just trying to explore and seeing if I could do it, right? And it was is a question: can I do this? And then it became a sense that I enjoyed it. I think this is a worthy pursuit. And Ironman became my annual test of fitness. And then I kept doing them over and over and over again, which I was purposely driven so I could get the world championship finish. That was my 21st. My 25th was pretty meaningful. That was in Boulder, Colorado. Not meaningful because I started and finished the race. It was meaningful for a conversation I had immediately after that race in the airport, speaking to a stranger while having a beer, French fries, and a hamburger. And the stranger said, what did you enjoy here in Boulder?" I said, "I did the Ironman." He said, that's interesting. Tell me about it." I said, I was telling him a little bit about it. He says, "How many of those have you done?" I said, 25. He said, "How many of those have you started?" I said, 25. Expecting a compliment here, right? Because I've started and finished. I've never not finished anything I've started. And he looked at me and he said, "I can tell from that answer that you're not sufficiently challenged." And what he was after is a recognition of us as humans. We are, by our very nature, we are explorers. And so I have not, because I had done 25 in a row without failure, the Ironman, the way I have been racing it, is not sufficiently challenging me. I'm not getting enough out of it. And I reflected on that conversation. It turns out he was a cultural anthropologist, which is why he thought so different. I said, it's the perfect time for me to step it up into the realm where I am, maybe I'll get a finish and maybe I won't. And that's the ULTRAMAN endeavor. And so when we take it from a single day to a multi-day, the quest was I needed different mindset to make that jump happen. Having succeeded at that and wanting to go even deeper into longer distance events, not 12 hours off, 12 hours on, 12 hours off, like the ULTRAMAN series, but continuous flow, where you've got a finite amount of time and you either make it or you don't in that amount of time. The pressure is much more intense. And so it begets a different mindset. When we think about if what we're really doing with these endurance events is something akin to adversity navigated victory in life, if that can be kind of the mantra by which we describe what we're doing, stepping up these distances is going to beget the need for deeper clarity, a more certain thought, and a bigger skill. So where I started out, I'm doing these basically experiments with my body, but really my mind too. That body-mind connection is integral to this type of endurance sport. I'm going to learn so much, and that was the goal, and I did.
Was it that kind of butting up against failure, or knowing that maybe that was the necessary next step that also pushed you to chase something like the Triple Channel? I mean, was it a similar, I know that there was ULTRAMAN in between, but was it kind of that continuation of, I did this, so now there must need to be some other challenge because clearly this is within my ability. Did you continue to kind of carry that forward?
It's interesting in the ultra distance triathlons. I never had that assurance. I definitely did with the Ironman because I'm thinking, as long as 17 hours is actually quite generous in terms of a time to do 140.6 miles. So I was never really worried about the time so much, as long as nothing catastrophic happened. But that's not true with the Anvil events. And so I'll lean in. I'll kind of give you these sets of of what I used in each one of these events. I'll kind of walk you through the series so you can kind of reflect on them. And then what we'll do is we'll think about swimming and how swimming kind of brings in a lot of these same sets in a less structured way. So the first one that I call for 140.6 miles, that's the Ironman distance, 2.4 mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, 26.2-mile run, that's the traditional marathon. And so at the end of the anvil, when you finish it, the anvil is there in front of you. And you take your hammer that they give you and you hit the anvil. You hit it once for every multiple of the iron distance that you just completed. You want to be careful you don't hit it more than once, because by legend they'll send you back out on the course. So when I did that first one, which is really a single day concept, they gave me the hammer. I named the hammer. I named all of my hammers. That's my way of expressing that mindset that was most important. So that first hammer, that's the hammer of passion. And so passion, what does that mean? It means we're fully committing. That's an alignment of mind, body, and spirit to begin our journey. And I've witnessed people at these anvil events that had so much passion. Not only could they do the single, but I've seen them do the all the way up to the deca distance with an outpouring of passion, which is really, really cool. That second hammer, I call it the hammer of humility. That's for 281.2 miles, a 4.8 mile swim, a 224-mile bike ride, and a 52.4-mile run. That's a double marathon at the end. That hammer of humility, that's really about acceptance. That's accepting reality as it is, even if it's unfavorable, and expressing gratitude for that lesson we've just received. That is a powerful pivot from where we previously were with that first hammer of passion. Think about how different that is. With passion, we could get there through a sense of identity that was ego focused. Look at the humility that we need to be able to give thanks to our crew, to our team members, to everybody who's there helping us. And then inevitably, things in that race will happen. And we'll look at that as lessons, things that need to pivot. So that's really important. That third one, we're talking of a distance, a triple 421.8 miles. That's a really vast distance. That's a 7.2 mile swim, a 336-mile bike ride, and a triple marathon. That's 78.6 miles of running. I call that the hammer of mindfulness, because now we're stepping up into the higher level mindsets. And here, what we're trying to do is anchor the present. We have to eliminate the distractions so that we can focus and we can execute. If we're really pivoting on that third hammer, there's a mantra I use, and I start with the long phrase: don't dwell on the past, don't fret about the future, just live in the moment. And then I can truncate that. So here's how that then reads: don't dwell, don't fret, just live. I can repeat that over to myself. Don't dwell, don't fret, just live. Now, the significance of that is if we're thinking about people that get caught up in a rumination where they're dwelling on the past, well, that's depression. And if we think about people who are fretting about the future and ruminating on that, that's anxiety. So we want to level set, and we do that by staying in the moment. And so here's how that applies on the race. Think about that 78.6 mile run. You don't want to think about how far you've ran, because that will make you feel incredibly fatigued. That can break you down mentally. You certainly don't want to think about how much more running you have to do. That can also break you down mentally. The only way to get through that race and that distance is to think about your task at hand, one foot in front of the other, again and again and again and again. Stay right in that very moment. That's how to do that hammer of mindfulness, that triple. Then we get up into the quadruple. Now we're 562.4 miles. The swim's 9.6 miles long. The bike ride is 448 miles long. And that run is now over 100 miles. 104.8 miles. We need something bigger. It's like mindfulness, but it goes even deeper. It solves for really greater intensity. We start with the premise that we are going to endure, and we're going to transform distress into motion. We're going to allow distress, what some people call suffering, and allow that to transform into something useful, eustress, and use that to stay calm, cool, and collected, and let distress become eustress. Let that adversity become our strength. That equanimity is a really, really powerful skill. But we take it one notch further when we get to the fifth and the final hammer, the hammer of transcendence. Now we're talking 703 miles. And I'll tell you this, a 703-mile triathlon, it's as hard as it sounds. The swim is 12 miles. The bike ride, 560 miles. And the run is a seemingly impossible 131 miles of running. And so here, the objective is to unify, to become one with the effort, where only the work remains. And that's our objective. So we're stepping outside the system, and then we're allowing the system to dissolve, and we're just existing as that work continues. We're beyond endurance at that point.
Mm-hmm. That's powerful.
Yeah. It's very powerful. Yeah. Yeah, and so I did this backwards, right? I lived these, I thought about it, and I reflected on it, and I came up with these mindsets, right? My hope is that I can now take this same process, share it with people like you and your viewers that are thinking about mindset and how do we use mindset to do the things that we really want to do. How can we become more effective people, more effective at the sports, our own personal pursuits, our business aspirations, our leading teams, even being a better father and parent. These are things that we can do, and these mindsets, all of them will help.
So I'm curious, how each of those hammers showed up in the swim. I mean, in reading the story, just to set the stage for our listeners, we have, rain at the start. You got a, 5:20 something PM start. It's late. It's rainy. It's dark. You ran into whales. The second channel, you had doubts, thinking about quitting. Let's get to the middle of that hour. Yes. You were just under 24 hours for the completion of those three channels.
Yeah.
Hours 10 to 12. Yeah. What hammers were you leveraging? Where did you pull that strength from?
Yeah.
If we tie that back to your previous experiences, because again, I think, it's extremely powerful to see those clear demarcations from 1 through 5. Where did that get leveraged in the darkest parts of that experience?
We need to begin this journey and answer that question in our minds. This is where that answer emanates from. And some people learn this from deep study. Other people learn this from experience. And when we think about the mind, we think about there are 3 ways. Think about the mind as a system. And there are 3 facets of this system. We have the subconscious. And so our subconscious is the things that make the billions and billions of decisions that sustain our bodily functions every single second. Much too much to be able to consciously control everything subconscious. From that subconscious layer, we get our emotions. That's the trigger. The next layer is the consciousness. That's where we interpret those emotions. That's where we get our feelings. And that's where we spend, and that's where we live, and we can concentrate on one thing at a time. That's kind of our executive decision making, and that's a really, really important layer. But it's incredibly limited in focus. And then most people don't realize it, or most people aren't consciously thinking about this. But there is a third layer, and it is really, really important. That's our meta conscious layer. That's where we have the ability to experience metacognition. And that's where we can really go deep with these mindsets. We can oversee the system. We can intervene with the system. And at some point, when we reach that point of transcendence and the system is working as we want it, we can dissolve and let the system just operate. So within those three constructs, we take an endeavor like the Triple Maui Nui Swim, and we start to apply these constructs with those same mindsets. But now what we actually need is another set of tools. We'll call them levers of control. Now that we know what we wish to do, how do we control that and influence that? And so we start with the hammer of passion. And even before we get to that, we want to level set. And we want to say the lever is identity. You are right to bring up identity, right? You know that that's really important. In your hierarchy, you've got the physical, the mental, the identity. And so the identity, it's foundational. And so it is the control of passion. Identity is the lever that allows us to control passion in a way that stabilizes the system. And let me make this very real, because I'm sure that sounded abstract to some of your viewers. We ask this fundamental question: who am I? And the answer is, I am someone who does this. And what is this? That is the endeavor that you have selected, that you want to achieve, whatever that may be. I am someone who does this. Now, if you've got a team, my team recognizes this, right? And this is what you get when you hire the phenomenal team that I described at the beginning of our call. So I have Tina Neal, and Tina says to me, Ted, be kind to yourself. And that's the advice. And she leaves it at that. She eliminates all the other clutter. She knows I'm going to engage in a 34-mile swim. She's done a 31-mile swim. She knows what's involved. And she says, be kind to yourself. Michelle Simmons builds on that same construct. And Michelle Simmons says, Ted, we're your crew. We're here for you. We will keep you safe and protected. All you need to do is swim. And so that's huge, because she told me what the crew does. The crew does safety and protection. That is so powerful, and I'll explain exactly why that is so powerful. It means my subconscious mind does not have to do my safety and protection. That's liberating. That means my subconscious mind can allow me to swim for 24 hours nonstop. It's no longer the responsibility of my subconscious mind to protect me, because that's what the subconscious mind does. The subconscious mind intervenes in endurance athletes and tells them to stop, not because the subconscious mind doesn't want them to attain their goal. The subconscious mind doesn't think in terms of goals, only thinks in terms of safety and protection. So that right there at the very start of the swim, hammer of passion, it checks the box on that. Not only have I'm here because I absolutely love Hawaii. I would absolutely love to create history with this phenomenal team, to be the first man in history, the second person in history to swim this swim. This particular swim is deeply personal to me. Harry Hoffaker attempted the swim. Who is he? He's one of the swimming legends. He's one of the original pioneers of Hawaii Channel swimming. And he attempted this swim in calendar year 1989. And he got all the first channel, all the second channel, and most of the third channel but he had to stop and cease his effort about 3 miles from his finish. So it was a question mark whether this swim, as technical as it was possible. And Becca Mann answered that question in calendar year 2019 when she, as an elite swimmer, a member of the U.S. national swim team for 8 years in a row and an Olympic aspirant, a child prodigy who had swam from the island of Lanai to the island of Maui at the age of 10 years old. More than 10 miles for a 10-year-old to swim is pretty amazing. So as a young woman, she had an amazing ability, phenomenal athleticism, and great discipline to bring that about and drive that solution where she was the very first to finish the swim, proving that it's possible. What I'm trying to prove to myself and others is take a man like me. I'm not a Olympically trained swimmer. I'm just a man who has an endurance mindset and a set of beliefs, core beliefs, that I believe I can do it with the right people. And I'm going to lean into that. Wow. I mean, that's a lot right there. Hammer of humility. Think about this approach. When we give thanks, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for providing me with the food and water that I need. Thank you for steering the boat in the right direction. Thank you for kayaking by my side. It changes the focus of things. It allows us to be grateful. When we have that ability to be grateful, it sets us up for a cognitive bias called a positive mental attitude. And in these endurance events, when you can get into really, really dark spots, that can be the way out because you're reinforcing these positive ideas and you're not getting stuck in things. The other one, the hammer of mindfulness, is a matter of just staying in the moment. It's an incredibly long swim, seemingly forever. You started at 3:23 p.m., left the shore, it rained, a thunderstorm happened. Got out on a beautiful beach, immediately returned to the water and started to swim literally all night until the next morning. Got out of that beach and walked back in, resuming to the water with an amazing amount of difficulty that I'll highlight here in a moment. But that ability just to keep swimming, to stay in the moment, and to do so with a sense of endurance, where that distress transforms into just that fluid forward motion. That's staying calm, cool, and collected and not getting overwhelmed with it is just so critical. And then finally, we get to the pivot point, which I'll tell you about, that involves the whale. And I think that's a really good, concise illustration of how we can take a situation and achieve a unity, a singleness of purpose, becoming one with the effort. And it was pretty remarkable. I'll tell you exactly where that happened in the swim. The swim lasted almost 24 hours in totality. Specifically, it was 23 hours and 47 minutes. But the precise time of 20 hours and 6 minutes into the swim, a remarkable thing happened. I looked under the water and I haven't been seeing much under the water. My ears are full of water, so my hearing is dulled. The day is a nice day. The daylight is out, the sun is out, and I can see 200 feet into the water, but there's nothing to look at. So despite that wonderful range of visibility, it is really sensory deprivation. Except for that moment that I just described where, lo and behold, an animal swims below me. It's a large animal, I can tell. It slowly rises up, and I first mistook it, couldn't quite tell what it was. And then here it is, slowly rising in the water column, getting closer and closer. Visually, I can tell it's about 12 feet, and it stops about 12 feet below me. And I look at it, and it looks like an organic version of a 737 Boeing. And it's beautiful in its structure. And immediately I've said, I've never seen a shark like this before. What type of species of shark might this be? And then it turned its head slightly, and I realized sharks don't turn the heads like that. This is not a shark, this is a whale. And I realized it's a baby whale. And this young whale calf is engaging with me in a curious manner, swimming at my relatively slow human speed, matching me effort for effort. And the two of us are making forward progress in the open ocean. My goal at that point disappears because it's irrelevant. What I had achieved at that moment was, in fact, that unifying instant where that whale and myself and my crew and my effort have all rolled into one and the same. And my arms are moving, my lungs are breathing, my legs are kicking, my body is rolling. And I'm just existing in that moment, closer and closer to the Lanai, and taking in this wondrous splendor that is immediately below me, and thinking how fortunate I am that I'm here in this place right now.
What an incredible story. I can't imagine how long did you stay? Did the whale stay with you?
Yeah. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. And I thought that was really remarkable because I'm a scuba diver as well. So I've seen a lot of really amazing animals. And this was certainly, of everything I've seen, this was by far the most spectacular. And I thought, wow, I may never have anything quite that spectacular in the rest of my life. That was just so epic. Until a couple minutes later, when that whale calf came back. And so we had 5 different swims together, each of which lasted about 2 minutes in length. It was the second of the 2 swims together, me and that whale on that second interval. And I could tell her turn her head and look up at me with her left eye. And it was just as I was breathing to my right and looking into the ocean with my left eye, we made eye contact. And I think you may know this, but the eye is actually an extension of the human brain. Eye, brain, one and the same. And so it was a magic moment where I made direct eye contact with the whale and had a sense of connection. But I didn't see it as an animal. I saw it as, really call it an inter-aquatic, intelligent life form that was non-human. And there was a profound sense of wisdom that came with that fleeting glance. And there was just a lot to take away from that very moment. And that's the gift that we can get when we do these endurance events. That's the flow. From a team perspective, it was really beautiful because we captured this on video, and I'll send you the video after the call. But my team was really excited. It shows a video captures this moment. Video starts and it shows the island of Lanai. That's where I'm headed, and it pans over. And first, you capture the kayaker and the kayaker beside me. Pan over a little bit more, and you see me swimming in the ocean. And then I stop and I shout to my crew, "Baby whale!" I'm telling them what I'm looking at, and why I'm stopping in the water. My crew shouts back at me, "Keep swimming, Ted," because we've got a task for it, right? And so I do. And it pans a little further over, and it's a group of 7 adult whales, and they're splashing in the water, doing their spouts and their tails. A little bit beyond that, and you can see the island of Molokai. That's where this third and final channel started. And just the shouts of joy from my crew and my team. At one point, Michelle said, "This is so remarkable. Oh my God, this is like SeaWorld in Maui," which is such a great quote. It was a defining moment. And in business, you see this a lot. You're working on a really important project, and you get about 80% of the way done, and the momentum starts to fade, and people start to fatigue, and the passion starts to wane. And so you need to celebrate the success, whether you create it or just simply recognize it as it emerges. And so this was organic, and we celebrated this robustly, and then we just cruised on into that finish.
It's one thing that comes to mind. You talk about the trust in the team and how you're able to, let that your subconscious mind kind of relax. And I certainly, can kind of see and feel that. But I'm curious that's a tremendous amount of time to be vulnerable.
Yes.
And to have that much trust as you continue to grapple with all of these things, and as fatigue sets in, it is, in my experience, it can be harder to access some of those skills and tools as you fatigue.
It is.
And so I'm just curious. Yes. I mean, how that felt, and again, having to kind of consistently come back to that level of trust and vulnerability for an extended period of time as you ride the inevitable highs and lows. What was that like from your experience?
You must take these mindsets and inculcate them into everything you do. You're right. You know it. You just can't turn it on at your most fatigued moment, because at your most fatigued moment, you'll go to your basal performance level. And here's the difference as to why, when I'm swimming, I find that I can stay to the best of my ability. And I'll give you a moment where I faltered, and we'll talk about that. It's important. But Becca Mann and I, we were debriefing on the swim and just comparing notes. And she's just wonderful with which to do that. And she asked me this question. She said, what was the time you most got angry at your crew? And how did they deal with that? And I thought about it. I said, Becca, that's the difference between me and you. I said, you have gobs of swimming talent. You can get really, really angry on your swim. And you've got the talent to literally swim against the current, as she did in the Out channel, the third and final channel. I don't have that. I don't have that fallback option. And so I don't have the discretion to get angry at my crew. So I have to make sure I lean in really hard to these mindsets and abide by them. I don't have the freedom to disregard them. But all of these endeavors, they have their moments. They have their dark moments. And so mine was at the conclusion of the second of the 3 channels. So we started from Lanai, swam to Maui. It's actually really beautiful landing on the Maui beach, on a Poly beach. If some of your friends have visited Hawaii, they'll know it. If you visited, it's a beautiful beach. I was there with my family on Christmas in 2021, and as I was getting closer and closer to the beach, I just thought of them there, me with them. And it's the same place. The only difference is the time. And that created a pivot from a sense of loneliness in the water to a sense of communal meal time, fun time, family time with the people I most care about and most love. And so that's a great mental state. I felt really, really good. Contrast that with having swam all through the night, feeling deeply fatigued, a little bit of right shoulder impingement. My stroke rate had dipped from 55 down to 44. So, the fatigue is really kicking in. It was the cold water that really took its toll on me. The water temperature in Hawaii, in the Pacific Ocean, in the month of February, when I did the swim, was a really consistent 74 degrees, which to the skin feels cool, but crisp as well. It's tolerable. At least for me it is. But when I got closer to the island of Molokai, there was water coming down, a stream coming down from the mountains that flowed into the ocean, creating brackish water. That water that flowed down from the ocean was the thunderstorm from that night. And it was cool, much cooler than the 74 degrees. And I thought to myself, I know it's not 74 degrees as I get closer to the shore. It's 72 degrees now because that's the perception. Human perception is about 2 degrees Fahrenheit. So the warmest it can possibly be right now is 72 degrees. And then it dipped further. And I told myself at this point, it's 70 degrees because that's the warmest it could possibly be since I recognized that. And I never allowed myself to think about water being any cooler than 70 degrees. But it did. It took its toll. And I had there's a sense of foreboding that I felt. My crew said that they saw a shark fin, and they know sharks really well. I like to think of it, since it was brackish water, as a bull shark, but in all reality, it was probably more likely a tiger shark or perhaps a Galapagos shark finding a little meal in the early morning in the shallows of that water. We were navigating, really important in the shallow waters, shark coral, and we had to find it. It was like navigating through a maze. Greek mythology, that'd be a labyrinth, and there's always a minotaur in the labyrinth. So was it the shark? Was it me? It's hard to say. I get out of that water, and so being really cold, that sense of foreboding that I had felt, the sense of my subconscious mind reaching up into my conscious and saying, we have swam enough. You've done enough. You've done 2 channels. This was pretty epic. This would be a wonderful place to go ahead and conclude the swim. And for that brief moment of weakness, I listened to it. And I told Captain Andy Joka, I said, Andy, I think I'm done here. And he looked at me because Tina told him. Tina told him, Ted is going to feel the need to abandon the swim right at this point. You've got to tell him something. You've got to tell him something so he makes the right decision. You've got to give him flexibility. This must be his decision. You don't have much time to say anything to him because he's immediately going to jump right back in that water. So good luck with that. So Captain Andy Joka, he says to me, he says, Ted, think about how you feel right now. Obviously, I want to stop this swim and end it and be done with it. And then he says, and think about how you'll feel for the rest of your life when you finish the Triple Maui Nui Swim. And I said, that's beautiful. I got in the water. I did one stroke of butterfly, then I put my freestyle together, and I had this renewed sense of energy because I had the conviction that I needed for myself. And then I realized, why am I selfishly thinking of myself? That speech that my captain gave me wasn't just for me. It was for him. It was for Phil Kibbe. It was for Logan Kibbe. It was for Brett Collins. It was for Terry Dietz, my companion swimmer. It was for Tina Neal. It was for Michelle Simmons. It was for all of us. And so now I realize that that's that channel check. That's that correction. That's that sense of humility, what we can hear, the lessons we can learn when we have that sense of humility. And so I swam on. I swam on, not for me, but for my crew. There's my higher purpose. And it was that was that pivotal moment. And I just swam and swam and swam.
It's it's powerful to think about what I don't know. I think maybe just another option, and I think there's a great kind of metaphor there for life, when we're in our low points, it's hard to imagine anything other than that low, and it's hard to see another opportunity or option or the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel. But I think, there's so much power there. Maybe the lesson is to find that person that can tell you that, we might not have, we might not have the ability to do it for ourselves. Maybe the lesson there that we need those handful of folks, that can help us see that we're actually, we're stronger than we think, that we'd be a hell of a lot more proud of ourselves if we stuck it out, that this near-term solution won't feel as good as long-term success.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, we need to find these people. We need to find the right people that are going to set us up for success. We are the average of our five closest friends. And here's the kicker: we get to choose our friends, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
a phrase I like to use is anybody can invite you to a party, but only a true friend invites you to a harrowing, life affirming experience and calls it fun.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Yeah.
that's the relationship I have with my great swimmer friend Terry Dietz. And I recognize, she and I, we've done many of these swims together. And she was at my side and she was intending to swim this entire swim with me. The cold water got the best of her. And so she needed to be extracted because she got hypothermia really about less than a mile from the first channel. And so it was sad to see. It was lonely to see her go, but I'm so glad that on my crew I had an emergency medical technician, and they were able to get her the warmth that she needed to come back. And so at the end of the swim, Terry has pivoted from my tandem swimmer to my escort swimmer to help me finish this remarkable swim. And she was just so helpful in that role. And I'll explain how this went. There's an expression, walking on glass, and it can be done. It's obviously unpleasant. It's tolerating, the extreme suffering, but it can be done. Certainly want to avoid it if you can avoid it. And one of the things that Mike Spalding said to me the day before the swim, he said, Ted, your crew's going to do everything they can to get you to the safest possible passage. But the reality is, you're going to land at Shipwreck Beach. It is aptly named, by the way. There are wrecked ships on that beach. And it's very shallow water. Sometimes that water is really rough. We're going to try to get you in there on a high tide. It could be a slack tide or even a low tide, which means your exposure to that coral, that sharp coral, will be pretty significant. And then it's a matter of navigating. It's another kind of maze to follow to stay on the soft sand and not the sharp coral. But he said, if they can't get you closer and you're so close, you may need to just hold this in the back of your mind. You may need to stand up and run right out of the water. And I said, Mike, if I run over the coral, won't that cut my feet? He says, yes, it will. And I said, okay, thank you. I got it. That was the end of the conversation on that topic. And I had this in the back of my mind. I did not want to focus on it during the swim because that could be unsettling. So I just had it as that I'll think about it when the time arises. And so as my captain, Andy Joka, is at the final moment, he's in the kayak. We're about to make landfall on the final island of Lanai at Shipwreck Beach. He is on my far left, and he says to me, he says, Ted, this next part of the swim is incredibly dangerous. I need you to do everything that I'm doing. When I move, you move. Follow the path. Sharp coral, we want to avoid it. If we make a mistake, you can get seriously injured. Terry Dietz is now back in the water. She's on my right. Well, she's done this channel multiple times, and she looks at me and she says, Ted, first, congratulations on finishing your swim. I'm like, Terry, this is the most important part. We're not even finished with it. She's, I know, this is the fun part. I'm like, Terry, what do you mean? She says, yeah, you swim to the coral. If you see you can't get around it, you just swim back and you try a different spot. And so she has this happy-go-lucky attitude about the most difficult, physically risky part of the swim. And I said, this is perfect because I've got two people with this diametrically opposed mindset. One, a, an abundance of caution, and two, a happy go lucky approach to it. And I'm going to put them at opposite ends. And 10 feet in one direction is Captain Andy, 10 feet in the other direction is Terry Deeds. I'm right in the middle. And so I stay there, and physically, emotionally, mentally, I'm right in that balance. And I use that, make the adjustments we can, and I walk out of that beach as the first man in history to finish the Triple Maui Nui Swim, 34 miles, 23 hours and 47 minutes, with not a cut, scratch, or scrape anywhere on my body. That is my team doing what they said they would do from the start, keeping me safe and protected.
I want to, on the heels of that incredible story and pulling all of those metaphors and together. I know you said ordinary people can do extraordinary things, and I'd love for you to leave us with I think a bit of a challenge. I'm curious, what's one thing you challenge people to do that they might not believe they're
Yeah.
capable of?
Oh, absolutely. Here's how I think about finding that right challenge. First of all, as explorers, we need to find something. We're destined. As humans, we are explorers. We need a challenge. It needs to be something that we challenge ourselves with every year. We need to believe that at the onset, we have no more than a 60% probability of success. We want more than a 30% probability of failure because that's where the growth comes in. And here's the way to think about it: if it doesn't scare you, it's not big enough. Take that
I love that.
challenge, attempt that challenge, succeed, reflect on what you learned. If you fail, congratulations. You have much more to learn. You'll learn so much more about your failures than you ever will from your successes. Double down. Pick a challenge that more suits your passions. Go for it. Do it. Learn, grow, develop.
I love that. Well, Ted, this has been an absolute pleasure. I can't thank you enough. I'm going to put on my running shoes and go for a long run. I already had one plan, but I think I'll push it a little further today. So I'm grateful. Thank you so much for your time, your experience, your story. It's been great. So I can't wait to share this with our audience.
Taylor, it's so delightful to speak to you. Thank you so much.